Okay, the best way that I know how to make a loaf is knead your smaller portions, and then you kind of want to make a log. Actually, okay, so we're gonna squish it out into a rectangle, and then start rolling from the far end towards you, and then tuck those bottom ends under, and then just squish it around. I'm going to show who's boss, and then put it into a greased loaf pan. So we're going to do that with each of these 3. And then where I said this makes 4 loaves, it also will do 3 regular size, and then take your last one and separate it into 4 and put it into a mini loaf pan, and then you'll have 4 miniature loaves of bread, which work really well for gift giving, or smaller servings if you have people who don't want a full loaf of bread. And just tuck it under. I'm actually going to switch these out because this pan's a little bigger. This loaf is bigger. Okay, so then we have our last section. We're going to do the same thing, just section that into 4, and they look pretty small, but they work out really well. So we're going to do 1 chocolate, 1 cinnamon, and 2 savory. So for the savory, I'm just going to flatten these all both out at the same time and sprinkle some Italian seasoning. And then pinch garlic and herb. And then I'm going to knead those right into it. And just knead it until you see the herbs spread all throughout the bread. Kind of like that. You can see speckles all throughout the bread. And then you'll just do the same process for rolling it into a loaf, just smaller. I have to put a pan right here. Same thing, and I like to use the whole board and use the dough to pick up any of those little bits of herb that didn't quite make it onto the dough. There we go, that's all set. And I'm going to wash the counter just so that we don't have the mix of the sweet and the savory. That's not as appetizing as you might think. I'm going to use pan spray this time just to give us a little bit of moistness, because it won't take much. Okay, so we're going to start with the cinnamon and sugar. And this is just some cinnamon sugar that I made up earlier. And do the same thing, just sprinkle it in, and then knead it. Now for this, because we're putting it in the same pan as the savory bread, I'm going to sprinkle some of the cinnamon sugar on the top so that we can tell what kind of bread it is. And then our last one, we're going to do a little bit differently. We'll do it more like a cinnamon roll, jelly roll kind of style. So I flattened it out into a loose rectangle. I'm going to use some of our cinnamon and sugar sprinkle. Put that over. And then a small handful of chocolate. We'll do the same thing, take the end farthest from us and roll it towards us and kind of push those in as you go. Now that's quite a bit longer than I want, so I'm just going to tuck my ends under and squish it together. Thank heavens that bread dough is so elastic. And that goes in the pan. Let's bring sprinkle some cinnamon sugar on both of them. Add a couple of chocolate chips on this one just as an identifier. Now we're going to set our bread in the oven that's been preheated and let it sit for about a half an hour to raise, and then flip it. Hi.
Hi, what are you doing?
Doing a video for one of my classes.
Oh, okay.
So our bread has risen and it's now in the oven. My kitchen was very cold, so it didn't rise as much as I wanted it to, but that's not a huge deal. I just put it in the oven a little bit earlier than I might have. Let's check on it. So it's not quite done yet. It needs to get golden brown over the top and then down the sides. That's one of the reasons that I like to use a glass pan so that I can see the sides of the loaf of bread. You may or may not have noticed that the loaf did split a little bit. That's because it did part of its raising in the oven. It just heated up faster than the bread could expand. So we'll check it again in a few minutes. Okay, our bread is done, so I'm going to pull it out of the oven. Oh, and it looks great and smells fantastic. Here's our first loaf. And our second, you can see through the glass pan, the edges, all the sides are nice and golden brown. That's why I like to use at least one glass pan. And our third regular loaf, and like I said, sometimes when I rush the rising, then I end up with, rush that too and it's stuck in the pan. Then I end up with this split right here where it raises up just a little bit more on one side. Tells me that my heat wasn't necessarily even. And here is our pan of 4. You can tell these ones here and here with the speckles on. Those are our savory loaves, and there's our cinnamon and sugar and our chocolate loaf. Okay, so you can see from, I'll just cut into this one right here. It's really hot. Generally you wait until it cools a little bit, but for the purpose of this, you can tell that our bread, it's risen nicely. Smells great. We want to let it cool so that it can let the moisture out. Otherwise it's a little bit sticky. Grandma likes to call it gummy, but that is how you make bread in a nutshell. So this bread, it has a nice crisp, crunchy crust, which I like. You can put some melted butter over the top and that'll soften it a little bit. But at our house, we like it to be crunchy. So, I hope you enjoy.